Oh boy, this is the title sequence similar to Pete Doctor, but not quite because it's a new version. Anyways, I don't know how long I got, but I don't know if this is gonna be copyrighted either. You know that old bit. Anyways, da 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 do do dee 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 da do 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 dee 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 bear. Brian Wilson, relief pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, 1.81 average earned runs. Texas needs 2. 2 outs, Nelson Cruz, designated hitter for the Texas Rangers. .318 batting average, the best in his 5-year career. A solo homer earlier in the game, nobody on. A current All-Star on the mound, and a former on the plate. Pitch 1, 88 miles per hour. Strike. Pitch 2, 89 miles per hour. Ball. Pitch 3, 96 miles per hour. Swing and miss. Strike. All San Francisco needs is one more strike to win it all. Pitch 4, 95 miles per hour. Pitch 5, also 95 miles per hour. Ball. The Rangers only need one more ball to have the opportunity to tie it up and stay alive. Pitch 6. 90 miles per hour. Cruz takes his shot and swings. In the crowd, 4 young adults were on the edge of their seats. Time seemed to slow down as the thoughts of the past year rushed into their minds. Jack Valdez had recently started college after having a rough final year in high school, but has recently returned to his academic prime. Lucian Navarro was starting off strong, holding a job and keeping their studies at an A average, but that wouldn't be possible without their twin, Cassandra Navarro, who worked alongside her to keep their parents proud. And then there was Lucas Smith, who decided not to attend college to finish off a project that he had been working on. The 4 were going toward greatness, and now they'd witness history. Struck him out! And for the first time since 1956, the Giants are world champions! The crowd goes wild as the team gathers up on the field, celebrating their first win in 56 years. That isn't the right math. 54. 54 years. After being a host to record setters, they finally made it. A group of unlikely underdogs made it to the end and won it all. The group of 4 left the stadium and went back to the hotel that they were staying at to get some good sleep before the return flight the following day. After going to their separate rooms, Jack, Lucian, and Cassandra fell asleep instantly, but Lucas stayed up late into the night holding a small knife in his hand. He looked over at Jack and thought to himself that if he was going to succeed, he'd have to take him out last. Cassandra could always reverse time after all, so she had to go first. Lucas stood up and walked over to the door, slipping the knife into his pocket before walking into the hallway. He then walked over to the girl to the other room and opened the door with the extra key that they gave him and entered. Both were asleep, so this would be the easiest killing of them all. He walked over to Cassandra's bedside and took out the knife, slitting her throat. He then walked over to Lucian's bed, but before he could reach them, Jack tackled him to the ground. The 2 fought for control as Lucian woke up from the commotion, screaming when they saw their sister dead. Lucas was able to overpower Jack and stand up, but before he could do anything else, the 3 disappeared from the room. Jack woke up dazed in the middle of a large room, still wearing his Buster Posey jersey from the night before. As he stood up and looked around, he became confused very quickly. The room around him had several tables on each side and a long red carpet in the middle, leading from the entrance. He turned around and saw a throne sitting at the other end with something on top of the seat. He walked over to the throne and picked up the small cylinder-shaped device, looking at it from all angles. Across the side of it was writing that was scratched into it, reading, "Everything comes from somewhere, even the creation of the universe." Jack put the object into his pocket and started walking towards the hall on the left. As he walked through the hall, Jack thought to himself that the medieval times were a bit limited on knowledge, so a creation myth would be something that would start similar to the several religions around the world. Eventually, he found himself at a large library, books covering the walls in all directions. He walked over to one of the many shelves and took out a book titled Valencia Through the Ages, 20th Century Edition. As Jack read through the book, he got more and more confused. Sure, he heard of the Spanish city, Valencia, but the text didn't tell of a European city in the 1900s, but instead of something that sounded like it came out of a storybook. The city was described as a medieval city that took on several bits of modern tech, such as cars and cell phones, that still lived in small communities outside the main city. It sounded like any other metropolitan with suburbs. He flipped through the pages, trying to find something that could help him figure out what happened when he heard a door opening close by. Jack closed the book and slowly set it back on the shelf, making sure not to make any noise. This place seemed abandoned, and if he knew anything, it's that noises in abandoned places means trouble. Whether it was a homeless person, some kids, or a serial killer, wasn't for him to find out, though, so he went in the opposite direction of the noise. Thankfully, the nearby steps were made out of stone, so there wouldn't be any creak in wood, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was already being watched. After getting to the top of the stairs, he quickly made his way to a room that was in the hallway and entered, slowly closing the door behind him. Once he was sure that he was safe, Jack sat down on the bed that was in the room, thinking to himself, this was just some prank done by Lucas. He didn't know Texas. There could be castles and taxes. Before he could think about it further, he felt something vibrating in his pocket. Of course, it was his phone, obviously. He took it out and saw that the screen was shattered. Strange, it wasn't like that last night when they left for the game. The game! What happened at the game, man? As Jack tried to remember, he saw some light from underneath the door. Oh God, it found him. He looked around quickly, trying to find a place to hide. The closet. Perfect. Except that every time somebody hides in a closet, they get found pretty quickly. Jack looked around at the covered window and he smiled. He'd climb out the window. Of course he would. Jack walked over to the window, careful to not make any noise, and moved the blinds out of the way. Oh yeah, he's on the second floor. But he'll probably survive the fall. Before he could think about what to do next, the door opened, and Jack turned around to see a young woman that he didn't recognize looking at him. "Who are you?" asked Jack, blocking the light from his eyes. The person turned off the light and said, "I was going to ask you the same thing. You don't look like you're from around here." Jack then noticed that she had pointed ears, similar to the depiction of elves that he was familiar with. "Well, my name is Jack, and the last thing I knew before waking up here was walking into the stadium. Why am I here, though?" The woman walked over and said, "In short, you're not on Earth anymore, and we're not sure if there's a way to get back. Do you remember anybody else coming with you?" Jack nodded and said, "My friends Lucian, Cassandra, and Lucas." "What do you mean that there's no way back? Is there life outside of humanity?" The woman nodded and said, "The planet you're on now is a win, and we're not sure about the proximity to your homeworld as we've never been. But yeah, as of now, there's no way back. But I'm hoping to fix that, and I need your help. You think you're interested?" Jack calmed down and said, "Alright, well, let's do it, but we need to find my friends first." The woman nodded and said, "In time. For now, you need to get some proper sleep so you can process the information and not go crazy." The woman then helped Jack out of the castle and into his new life waiting before him. The city of Valencia stood strong as the capital of the greater state of Ileana, split in two by the Rose River. On the northern side of the river was the metropolis that used the modern tech available to the populace, housing the businesses and government of the locale. On the southern side was more of a suburban area, holding the residents of the city within its borders. Through overlooking the southern side on the Asapian Mountains was the fortress of Valencia, still standing from the medieval times that the city was founded in. It as a whole had an enriched history dating back to the War of Valor, which makes it a huge spot for tourism and constantly sees Staudian visitors. The influence of Stott quickly made the locals one of the most progressive of the topic surrounding Stott and its people, which caused a wedge to grow between them and New Arcadia, a historically more conservative area. And now that Estadian has randomly appeared in one of the most sacred areas in all of Arcadia, the council has taken massive offense to the idea of desecration. In the center of New Arcadia, a massive tower stood above all the rest, a circular structure topping the monolith, similar to the Space Needle in Washington, specifically Seattle, or the Lucky 38, if you're familiar with it. That was more of a direct inspiration than the Space Needle was. Anyways, inside of the Capitol building was a group of people shouting about a recent issue that had recently come up in the nation. At the helm of the council was the president of Arcadia, Logan Lipton. Surrounding him were several figures from the many states of Arcadia, one of which was Isabel Morales, the governor of Ileana. Another was a young explorer from Stott named Zarian Quintana, who was in charge of a group of bounty hunters associated with Vanguard. We can't just cut off the people of Vanguard because of an incident that you can't even prove was caused by us, said Zarian. Logan stepped in and said, "The decision is final, man." Right. "The decision is final, sir. We won't be dealing with it any longer. And until the situation is resolved, we will not be dealing with Vanguard either. Now, Isabel, why are you here?" "Well, around 6 yesterday I found somebody inside of the fortress that is under Valencia's jurisdiction, and he is a Terran," said Isabel, who proceeded to pull out a file filled with various documents. "Now, I'm having him tested because I think that this attack on the shipment might be caused by an outside force that may be associated with him." Logan nodded and looked towards Zarian. "I'm sorry for judging conclusions. You know how things get. Now, Isabel, who do you think attacked the shipment?" Isabel took a deep breath and said, "Well, sir, it may have been Lucius." Logan cut her off quickly and said, "I am tired of hearing about that man. He died thousands of years ago, Morales. The decision stands." Isabel and Zarian stood up and walked out of the room, Logan sighing as he sat back down. He looked up at the files and got up, walked over to them, and opened them up. Jack woke up smelling the strong scent of bacon. He got up and walked towards the scent, ending up in the dining room. The teenager, sitting at the table, looked up at him and said, "So you're finally awake? Must have been a wild night for you." Jack sat down at the table and said, "Not that I remember. What is this place again?" The teenager swallowed his food and said, "Well, I assume my sister already told you about the whole, different planet thing. So Valencia would be what you're asking about. Anyways, I'm Alex and you're Jack, right?" Jack nodded and said, "That I am. Sorry if I'm prodding here, but are your parents in the picture by any chance?" "They went missing a long time ago. In war, and when my sister was old enough, she decided to move out, and I went with her." "What about you? What's your story?" Jack shrugged and said, "Well, since my dad was working in Texas, he decided to buy my friends and I to Game 5 of the World Series. The last thing I remember was going to the game. Hopefully the Giants ended up winning." Alex stood up and said, "Wait a minute." He ran to his room and grabbed a box of various trinkets and set it down on the table. He took out a small cardboard rectangle and asked, "Do you collect?" Jack smiled and said, "A bit. Why?" Alex handed him the card and said, "A guy came through town once and gave me this card. Said it was some famous guy. Do you know who it is?" Jack looked down at the card and said in disbelief, "You have to be kidding me. You have a signed card of Babe Ruth?" Alex nodded and asked, "Is it rare or something?" Jack laughed and said, No, no kidding, man. Any card of Ruth's is worth hundreds, but one that's signed is probably worth thousands even. It's a good thing that it's in mint condition." He handed the card back to Alex and said, "But that doesn't matter as, the main worth of it is the worth you assign to it yourself. And that's what matters, okay?" Alex shrugged and said, "Most people end up here tend to leave their past lives behind and accept that this is their life now. But after what happened in the council recently, it's starting to look like that's less the case." Jack became intrigued and asked, "What happened?" Okay. Alex continued with his train of thought, visibly getting uncomfortable as he did so. "Well, after a lot of study and some missing, an investigation was launched to try to find out where they were going. It was discovered the council was experimenting and kidnapping them, and they ended up dying. And my sister can tell you more. She was directly involved with it." As Alex finished talking, the door opened and Isabel walked in, clearly exhausted from the long start to her day. She looked at the two and smiled before quickly apologizing. "Sorry, my brother is just really into the idea that there's another world out there and likes to collect things." Jack stood up and said, "It's fine. I don't mind answering a few questions for people that are curious. Speaking of which, have you found Lucian yet?" Isabel nodded and said, "Yeah, she's with Andrew, but he can be a bit stingy when it comes to his patients. Anyways, I'm sure that you'd like to know more about why you're here." Jack nodded and said, "Actually, Lucian uses they them pronouns. Sorry if I interrupted." Isabel smiled and said, "It's okay," and continued, "Keep it short. It's been rough around here, and recently the people of the city need somebody to look up to. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but you literally fell out of the sky when everybody needed to do the most." Jack stopped her and said, "Is this about the big war on the government conspiracy? Because I can assure you that I am not ready to get involved with that." Isabel smiled and said, it's actually a lot more simple than that. Everybody here has deep roots on both sides of the issue, and we need somebody to calm people down. And what's better than the descendant of the people that set the foundation of the area being from the world that they fear? Jack sighed and said, Isabel, to be honest, I am still trying to figure out stuff myself now more than ever, and I'm facing a whole new reality. I just need some time to relax. Hell, my best friend turned out to be some century-old psychopath whose whole purpose in life was to kill me. Even now that everything has settled down, my best friend is in danger because of me. Isabel nodded and said, since I've been in charge of the city, everything's been tough. And just a few weeks ago, I led people to their deaths and barely got out myself, so yeah. I guess we both got pretty crappy lives, and I just want to help somebody get home, hoping that their sacrifices will be worth it, if we can succeed at that. Jack looked up and said, I guess we'll have to find a way out of this train wreck together then. Isabel smiled and said, yeah, I've got some work to get done, so if you'd like to go look around town, feel free to do so. Jack smiled and thanked her before walking out of the house and into the new world, hoping that he'd be able to find something close to what he had left behind. After a long day that resulted in little to no information, Jack went back home as the sun set over the mountains. As he walked in, Isabel asked, find anything interesting? Jack sighed and said, nothing. It's a bit weird that out of every person that's ended up here, none of them have wanted to go back. Like, wouldn't they want to return to their families and get back to the life they knew? Some people have life easier here than where they came from. I've heard that there's a lot of discrimination back on Earth, and through the centuries, it sounds like things are getting better, but even now it seems like things are still pretty bad, right? Jack sat down and said, well, it's true. Yeah. Even people like me, don't have that much of an advantage if we start off poorer than others, and yeah. You'll probably be considered a hero if we manage to do this, Jack. Like you said, all of those people have families to get back to. And they'd be thankful to have the chance. Jack nodded and said, I guess you're right. I'm gonna go see how Lucien's doing. See ya. As Jack walked down the sidewalk, sirens started to go off. As he looked around, his people ran inside and closed the closest building, and several police officers ran down the street, but they stopped about 10 feet away from Jack. He turned around and saw something standing roughly 30 yards away from him, lumbering slowly towards him. The sirens went silent, revealing the absence of sound in the area. The officers slowly approached Jack, but he was too interested in what the hell was in front of him. It had to be somewhere around 10 feet tall, similar to the look of a grizzly, except for the prongs on its head that could be its ears. It started to sniff around the air around it, eventually landing its eyes on Jack. He started to walk towards the beast, feeling as if it were calling out to him. Once he was close enough to hear it breathing, the bear walked towards him and nuzzled his hand. Jack lifted his hand up, and the bear rubbed its head against it before turning around and walking away. Jack sighed with relief. But then the bear roared and turned around. The guards rushed forward, but it was too late. The bear had already jumped on top of Jack. He was trying his best to fight it off, but as he slipped out of consciousness, he heard several guns fire. The following morning, Logan Lipton was called to Valencia to see that Jack had survived an attack from one of the fiercest creatures in all of Wynn, the Tenebris Sonorcide. The Tenebris Sonorcidae. Logan looked up at Isabel and said, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be sending our representative to fetch a trainer for him. In the meantime, I want you to house him and make sure he catches up on the history of stuff. That way he can work for us. Isabel nodded and said, and asked, what about his friend? Lucas smirked and said, they can train alongside him as long as we can get him on our side. We need this right now. A man from both worlds that is also immortal? Oh, if we could get him to fight for us. Isabel nodded as Lipton left the room, clearly excited from the realization. Alex looked up and said, I know what you're thinking, Izzy, but there's no way he won't notice. Isabel took a deep breath and said, I know, but we've got to do it before it's too late. Out in Stott, a young man worked for his plans on a place known as the Heaven Islands. A calico cat jumped up and batted at his hands, causing him to set down the pen and get up from the table. A knock came at his door, and he walked over to answer it. Mr. Lavelle, Council Leader Lipton has a request. Thank you to listening to the first episode, for the pilot episode of the Chronicles of Wynn, History in the Making. I'd just like to thank you for listening and giving it a chance. And the first season, it's hard at work. The first episode at the time of recording this already has 4 pages of the 15 roughly that'll come out to be roughly half an hour to 45 minutes of audio. So yeah, expect that time frame for episodes, and maybe expect some quote-unquote commercials to add a bit of story, add a bit of context for what's going on in the story here and there. A bit of a Three Dogs / Mr. New Vegas type of feel, Might have a special cameo for those moments. Anyways, yeah, it has been great with this episode, and I don't know why I'm wasting time, because there's only 7 possible more minutes left for footage, but yeah. Thanks for listening, and episode 1 for season 1. Episode 1, season 1. The Rose Awakens. Season 1, The Rose Awakens, episode 1, The Beginning of a Legend, is on its way. Expect it probably late February, early March. Might be mid-February if I get it done fast enough, but late February, early March as a bit of a leeway, and yeah. And if you came here specifically for this, thank you. If you came here expecting other things, like Shift Tech related things, this is Shift Tech related, but besides the point, yeah. Teasers for various new series that I'm planning will be released, and hopefully it'll have more guest-related stuff, and maybe if SNR gets back on its feet, we can revive Shift Tech Central as well. Anyways, I think I'm done here. I think this is enough time for the credits, so let's take it to the outro song. Welcome to the outro. This is the end of the episode. If you're still listening, thank you and goodbye. See you next time, I guess, because there's no schedule on these. Anyways, do 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 ding.